Oh my gosh, I'm here. I'm only going to go live for about an hour. Hello in the chat. It's so nice to see you. I'm currently setting my timer so I don't go overboard and burn myself out and freak myself out. But it's so nice to see you. Hi, Gen X. Thank you for being here. And DJ Fox. And wow, this is a long name. I know who this is. And you've changed your name recently. Taylor Swift, greater than Disney, Star Wars, and MCU, and Doctor Who. Okay. Hi, guys. It's really good to see you. I'm going to write down a few things that I want to talk about today. We're going to have a little dance tonight. There are several things I want to talk about. I'm going to give you guys the options. Let me know what you think is most interesting. One is that 1917 is probably the best film, technically speaking, that I've ever seen. I think it was phenomenal. Oh my gosh, it was so good. So impressed with that film from every element. I could not get over the shots. The acting was phenomenal. The music was extraordinary. It's some of the best music I've heard in a film. And what I loved about it is that even though 1917 is a period piece, the music felt timeless, but also modern. The fact that a film like that can still be made where you can tell that everyone involved was at the peak of their ability in production, creativity, skill, and talent, I still can't wrap my head around it. I can tell this is one of those films I'm going to be thinking about probably for the rest of my life and wanting to revisit. I saw Civil War a couple weeks before I saw 1917, and Civil War, I think that also gained a lot of popularity because it acts kind of like a warning for today's society, the way things are going with the infighting between different groups of people, belief systems, ideologies, the news media, etc. And I actually felt that 1917, even though it was a period piece, was actually more effective as a deterrent for war and the current cultural misgivings we have. I actually thought that that was more of a deterrent towards the possible outcomes that we could have as a species than Civil War was. And Civil War was effective. I appreciated it, but it did not move me the way 1917 did at all. Not even close. Another thing we could talk about, anything existential. You guys know I'm into philosophy and existential stuff and anything to do with life and life's purpose and that sort of thing. These are things that I'm currently working on. So I'm just going to write existential things. Existential things. We're going to talk about existential things if you want to. Under that umbrella, death and loss, grief. I have quite a few friends that have been through death and loss and grief in the last couple years. It's a universal thing we all have to go through. Some haven't been through it yet, and I want to see if we can find a reasonably light, interesting way to talk about it. Gen X says, please talk about the Acolyte. Oh, that's another thing I need to get out of the way. I don't watch Star Wars stuff anymore. I've been so overwhelmed with how much has been coming out, and I honestly feel like that part of that chapter of my fandom is closed for now, and I don't know when, if or when I will reopen it. I will always love the original trilogy. You guys know that if you know me at all. But right now I'm waiting because so many people will tell me to watch something and then I watch it. I'm like, doesn't do it for me. Zuby says, I refuse to believe Disney Star Wars is canon. Yeah, I haven't been watching any of the Disney Star Wars stuff. I know a lot of you guys love it. I know a lot of people that really enjoy it. Something about it, I just can't do the Disneyfication. I know they're trying to do it dark and gritty and it's like a Western. Is it though? Like, is it really though? Thomas Woodford says Rogue One was okay. Same as the first 2 seasons of Mandolorian. Other Disney Star Wars movies I didn't care for. Yeah, Rogue One was one of the last properties I watched. I also watched the first several episodes of Mandalorian just because everyone seemed to be losing their minds over it. It wasn't really for me. I didn't love it. I didn't love the CGI recreations of Luke Skywalker. And I know what you're doing, Disney. You're trying to keep the old fans on while bringing in new fans. And I know The Force Awakens, I did enjoy it. I did. I think if I watched it now, I'd see through it because hindsight's 2020, of course. At the time, I didn't see through. I was hopeful that because J.J. Abrams was such a Star Wars fan, I was very hopeful that he would do it justice. And I think I was just a little bit rose Tico colored glasses. But I did not like, what was the one that came out? The one that we all hated. Return of... What was the first bad one? Oh my God, with Rose Tico in it. What was that? I can't even remember. This is a good thing. I'm convinced this is a good thing that I can't remember because I was such a defining pivot in my life where I had to grow. And this is, you know what, this is a half-baked idea, but I think I had to mature as a person from losing Star Wars the way I loved it. And I had to detach from this media property that I was so attached to. And like I always say, I will always love the original trilogy. It will always have a place in my heart, but I've matured as a person in letting go of my expectations for something that I can't control. And I'm glad. Caffeinated Wolf says, I'm down for anything positive. Same. That's another thing I'd love to talk about is how we attach ourselves to story. and how I've become very aware that I do not vibe with people or energy that is negative for the sake of being negative, complaining for the sake of complaining, victim narratives. I just find it to be incredibly draining, and that's a new thing that I've recently discovered. And I think that's become a new form of currency for people. People almost seem to think that the more that they can complain, the more valuable they are, or the more seen they are. I don't think it's a healthy way to be. Yes, Caffeinated Wolf says, how about choosing to focus on positive things we love instead of that which we don't? I cannot agree more. Focusing on the negative drives you directly in towards the negative and drives negative things towards you. Just brings more of that into your life. I agree with that. Suffering and pain and strife is inevitable in life, but by focusing on it, it just no. Yeah. It says complaining is what every YouTuber does, though. It's all about clout and views. I don't watch that kind of stuff anymore. I don't partake in that. I try to only partake in things that either better me, challenge me to be better, or uplift me in one way or another. And it's honestly shifted. It's changed my whole life. I feel way better. But it's, it's still challenging. Being a human in general is challenging. I think we can all agree with that, regardless of our circumstances, our upbringing, and our current life choices and values. I think life is always challenging, no matter who you are. Within that challenge comes beautiful meaning sometimes, assuming we choose to focus on the meaning. Ooh, Gen X says, can we talk about how society is now at the lowest rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So at the bottom, we have physiological needs: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. So Gen X is saying that modern society is at the bottom right now. We could argue that there's always room for multiple different people to be at different areas here, but I would definitely agree that most people are not on the top, which is self-actualization, desire to become the most that one can be. Speaking of The Boys, I've heard that's really good, but I'm really nervous to watch it because I'm super squeamish. I have a really hard time watching violence, especially gratuitous violence and lots of blood. So I'm really scared to watch it, but I've heard so many people say that it's really good and I really want to give it a try, but I'm really nervous. Let me know if you think I could handle it, but that's one thing I don't love is gratuitous violence. Ugh, it just freaks me out and then I keep thinking about it. And, yeah, I love horror. I'll watch like really dark existential film, but if there's violence in it, especially if animals get hurt, I can't do it. I have to go to doesthedogdie.com and make sure I'm safe watching it. No one will save you. No one will save. Oh yeah, I did see that. I did. I didn't love it, but I appreciated it. It made me feel kind of claustrophobic, which I think was part of the intention. It was cool. I loved the set, and the set design was really cool, especially for the home. I didn't love the creature design. I actually found that the aliens lost their spiciness, like their ability to scare me after a while. It's kind of like the Jaws effect. Less is more. The more you see of the actual creature, the less you feel a little bit intimidated by it. You want an element of mystery. And after a while, I hope this doesn't offend you, but I remember laughing at a few certain points just because it felt so, I don't know, I felt they overused the alien, but I could see why you loved it because it was definitely a different film and it was fun, and I'm all for a good extraterrestrial thriller. But as far as alien horror, my favorite will always be Alien, the original. What books are you reading right now? Any recommendations? Let me see. I'm actually reading a book on alchemy, which is really interesting. I keep my books all over because I rotationally read, so I read different books at a time. This one's actually written by a psychologist named Dr. Shefali Sabari. It's called The Awakened Family. It's just really fascinating because she delves into like childhood development and how our ego kind of affects our parents' ego affects how we grow up, our ego affects how we raise our children. So if you're ever thinking about having children, if you have a family, or even if you just want to understand yourself better in the realm of how you grew up and how you interfaced with your parents, your culture, your home, it's very fascinating. She's a good writer. She's also a really good speaker, and she's a very beautiful woman. So she's very easy on the eyes to watch, and she's a wonderful speaker, and she's vastly intelligent, and she has a lot of insight into personal relationships and stuff like that. This alchemy one is by Dennis William Hawke. It's interesting. So it goes into alchemy. It kind of goes back and forth between medieval times and ancient Egypt and then modern times, and basically talking about how like more so the power of transmutation. So a lot of, medieval alchemists were known for changing compounds into other compounds. So you could make water into gold or something like that, water into wine and a stone into gold or whatever. But this version of alchemy is more so about transmuting your thoughts from transmuting your story and how you perceive things into something more powerful for you, so that you can kind of look at your obstacles and challenges as something to help you grow. So that's been very helpful for me. I've watched the Y Files. I can't get past the talking fish, heckle fish. It just drives me crazy. I don't know. I don't like watching super produced YouTube. I guess that's kind of why I like being very minimal with my YouTube is I don't know. I don't like when it feels like a show, like a produced show. And he's good. I'll say the Y Files is good. It just feels almost too produced for me. I like watching stripped down, just people talking or doing interesting things. Once in a while, I'll watch something that's a production. I watched this Egyptology series with this female Egyptologist. She's amazing. She's British. She has shortish red hair. She just loves Egypt. I'll watch that. That's kind of produced. It kind of feels more like an actual production series. Oh, I like lo-fi, low budget YouTube people that just feel like people recording in their rooms. It's relatable. I like that. I had a moth infestation in my apartment recently. So a backstory is I am someone where if there are insects in my home, assuming that they're not scary looking like a centipede, which isn't even technically an insect because it has a lot of legs. I forget what family they're in, but they're not technically insects, or a scary looking spider. And there's a difference between a cute spider and a scary looking spider. A scary looking spider, if you know, you know. There are cute spiders. I will coexist with them. They can walk around, they can do their thing, they can live in my plants, they can walk on my walls. If it's a scary looking spider, I have a catch and release method that I almost always try to employ, assuming it's reachable. So I have a catch and release method with a jar. I get a big, I actually have it right here. So I'm going to give you guys these tips because these are great tips because I believe in rehoming or catching and releasing animals in humane ways whenever possible. For my moth infestation, in case any of you ever have a moth or other insect infestation, moths are so easy to catch, first of all. But anyway, let me try to stay on topic. I had so many moths. Once in a while, they fly by my head. It's been years, but there were only a few, maybe, I don't know, 3 moths a week. And they're really the cute, tiny ones. So whatever. Oh, moth flew by. Okay. Sometimes they do some weird kamikaze stuff where I'd be cooking and they just fly into the flame on my stove. And I would always feel really sad when that happened. I found out that mothballs are really unhealthy for people and also unhealthy for your pets. The other option were sticky traps, which I just think are one of the most inhumane things possible. You take your jar, pretend this is a wall. You take your jar, gently is the key. You put it over where the moth is, and then you very slowly and carefully move the jar, lightly touch the moth, and it flutters into the jar. You don't even need a whole cap to screw on. You just go like this. And then I go and release them on my balcony and they just flutter away. In the last week and a half, I'm so proud of myself. I think I've caught and released over 28 moths, and now I have 1 moth up there. And that is such a drastic change from what I was experiencing the last month and a half, because it used to be there would just be moths flying everywhere. I mean, there probably would have been a point where if I had live streamed a month and a half ago, there would have been moths here. So I'm very proud of myself for humanely finding a way. Thank you. And I hope that I inspired at least one person to save a multitude of moths in your home. Because you can't just rehome ants because they will basically build a colony in your home. So very sadly, you have to get ants at the source, which is the queen. So you have to take them all the way out, which makes me very sad because I love ants and I think ants are so cute. And I've spent hours of my childhood watching ants in my driveway. Didn't your cat exterminate the moths? She would catch a few of them. She would. And I'm not going to fight her nature. She's a cat. She's inevitably going to do her thing with insects. And unless it's a super cute insect and I can intervene fast enough, I'll usually let her do her thing. But if I can intervene and it's super cute, like one time she caught one of those really cute fluffy white moths. It was so cute. And I had to intervene with that one. And I luckily got to it before she did any real damage and let it go. But when I lived in New York, I lived in a basement apartment and it was so damp in there, we would get centipedes. If any of you are familiar with these, dear Lord, oh my, do you see this? Oh, I hate it so much. Oh my God, look, but you know what? When you zoom in on its face, it's kind of cute. Oh, I never saw a face. Hang on. Wait. Oh, that's kind of cute. Can I expand it? I guess I don't have a touchscreen computer. Well, I think The Tree of Life by Terrence Malick is a beautiful film. It's definitely on the artsy side, and I think some people might think it's pretentious, but I think that's just Terrence Malick's style. It's beautiful, it's ambient, and it's a really unique film. The narrative structure is very different in that it explores the life of a small family in Texas, and it will show like scenes of the sons when they're babies, and then it'll show scenes of them as adults, and it'll kind of slip through time, and then all of a sudden you're back with the dinosaurs, and then all of a sudden you're going back to the Big Bang. The music is gorgeous. The film itself is gorgeous. The cinematography is unbelievable, but it's not for everybody. It's definitely not a Hollywood movie by any stretch. It's beautiful, but it's more of like an exploration. And I don't know, what does this all mean? It's a very existential film. Yeah, The Tree of Life is not for everybody. I don't know how many people I can recommend that to. Some of the more artsy people here, I think, would appreciate it. A ghost story with Ben Affleck. No, Casey Affleck. That one's really beautiful too. It's very transient. It's kind of similar to Terrence Malick, his style. That one is kind of devastating, but in a beautiful way. And then also, I just think watching any films that you enjoyed with your loved ones, like one of my mom's favorite movies was Muriel's Wedding, and I watched that after she died, and that was very cathartic because I began to see, and that's another thing that happens when you lose someone you love, I think, at least for me, you begin to see them more as the person that they were instead of just the relationship you had to them. So I became really fascinated with who was my mom as a person, as a child, as a little girl, as a young woman, as a worker, as a colleague. Like, I had so many people in her life reach out to me and tell me their version of her, because my mom, a lot of people loved her, and it was really beautiful to hear people's experiences with her that I hadn't personally experienced because I was just her daughter. I just saw her through one small lens. Tree of Life's a movie you need to immerse yourself in. It's not an easy watch per se. Yeah, it's definitely oh my gosh. Good girl. Yes. Good girl, Nova. I want to praise her when she does it because I'm so proud of her for walking in it, because I want her to get good. She already gets good exercise because she just runs by herself and plays by herself all the time. But I want to keep praising her. But every time I say good girl, she turns and stares at me. You know, if someone had told me 10 years ago that I was going to lose my mom at the beginning of the pandemic to cancer unexpectedly, and I was never going to be able to see her again after the last time I saw her, which was the Christmas before she died, I would have thought that I would need to be institutionalized because my mom and I were incredibly close. She was my best friend. That being said, once I realized I needed to get through it and decided I need to get through this, and I took the time and the energy to learn who I was without my mom and also who I was because of my mom, and to kind of fill in the gaps between those things, I would say that my life is better now. Not because my mom's gone, but because of the work that I've had to do after losing my mom. So if any of you out there have a person in your life that you're scared of losing and you feel like your life will end, I will promise you now, if you can even begin to comprehend what it is that that relationship does for you and start working on giving that to yourself, you will be okay. It's going to be hard. Like, death and grief is like the hardest thing I've ever been through. You have to be willing to show up for yourself. I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is like, how do I show up for myself? How do I work on myself? How do I change the things that always bothered me about myself because I need to now, because my mom wasn't there to unconditionally love me? I realized when my mom died that she was the only person I felt truly unconditionally loved by other than my grandparents. And now I feel that from my dad, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't always feel unconditionally loved from my dad. And that's another relationship I had to repair after my mom died. So that's a lot of stuff, but I'm getting through it and I'm really proud of myself. And it's been really hard, but it's been the most rewarding work that I've ever done. I was someone that always prided myself on being a very self-aware, introspective person. There's only so much good being introspective and self-aware was doing me if I wasn't taking action on the things I actually wanted to change or the life I wanted to live. But I actually haven't really had a low day in a long time. So I'm really happy about that. And learning to regulate my own emotions. Looking back, if I'm honest, I think I had kind of an emotionally codependent relationship with my mom, where I outsourced a lot of my own feelings and emotions to her. I had to learn how to do that from within, or I was just going to latch on to another. I remember when my mom died, I would look at like other women and be like, I want that to be my mom. I need a mom. Like, I remember thinking that. I don't feel that anymore. I love seeing like older women that remind me of my mom, but I don't have that like longing anymore. And that's something because I'm able to give that to myself in a new way now. So I know you didn't ask for that tangent, but it's been very important to me, and it's been a huge life lesson. And if anyone ever has questions about grief, loss, death, any kind of existential question. That's like my wheelhouse now. It is a long journey, but it is a really meaningful one, and it's helped me a lot in all the other aspects of my life. I always recommend 6 Feet Under to people. Not only does it kind of confront death, it also confronts the relationships that we hold in life, and it has a representation of a lot of different types of relationships in that show. And really, when you think about grief is the effect that we feel because of the relationship we had with the person that we lose. We're not just grieving the loss of the person, we're grieving the loss of the relationship. So what I thought was so brilliant and beautiful about 6 Feet Under is it concentrated, yes, on death and the rituals around death from different cultures, because the premise is you have the Fisher family that own a funeral home. So they have all different types of families that come there with different religious backgrounds, spiritual backgrounds. And even within the same spiritual or religious background, you'll have people that deal with death completely differently. But what they really delve into are the relationships people have with each other and the relationships people have with themselves. So for me, I try to rewatch that show like once every 2 or 3 years, just because it's almost like a re-up on my human empathy and like understanding of myself. I think most people could enjoy 6 Feet Under. It's one of those shows where it starts off kind of different than it ends up. So if you can get through like the first 5 episodes, there's some dated elements to it in terms of like the early 2000s where everything felt there was like a bit of raunchiness to it, but not in a funny way, kind of in a weird dramatic way. It was HBO. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts with 6 Feet Under. So I would highly recommend that. I think any of you guys could watch that and enjoy it. Get past the first 6 episodes, and if you still don't like it, maybe it's not for you. And I know that sounds like a lot of time to commit to a show, but it's 6 seasons long, and I think I grow as a person every time I watch that show. And it's entertaining. There's a lot of very funny moments. Once you get to know the characters, it has a very dark sense of humor. Michael C. Hall, I would watch Dexter once in a while, and I remember thinking, I think it was just because he was playing a sociopath or a psychopath. I think he thought he needed to be intentionally kind of flat. You really see his acting chops in 6 Feet Under. I mean, I was so impressed in his ability. You can definitely see, I think he has theater training, and you can see it so well in 6 Feet Under. He explores a lot of range in that role, and I was really impressed with it. A lot of emotional range. The whole cast is really, really excellent. Rachel Griffiths, who's an Australian actress, I believe. I was so impressed with her. So many of the actors are phenomenal in that show. And the cast, I just think the cast keeps getting better as they add more people too. I have a hard time putting myself out there, and sometimes I watch YouTubers and I just marvel at how natural they are, and also how they just seem so good at YouTube. To be fair, I've never had a regular schedule with YouTube, but I'm kind of glad that I haven't, because I still feel like I'm able to be myself, and that's really important to me, is just this being like an authentic extension of who I am. I don't know, I like YouTube being this way. I think for a while I thought I needed to make video essays, like serious video essays and serious philosophical theory and stuff, and now I realize, no, I just want this to be an extension of who I am and what I'm learning and what's fun and what's interesting. So no, it's okay, Eric K. You're not bringing down the stream. These are real things. This is life. These things happen. It's horrible, and they deserve much more than a moment of our time to honor them. And that's so sad. And I know I appreciate you bringing attention to it, because it's a reminder for all of us that life is fragile. Life is precious. We can lose loved ones at any time. We can lose ourselves at any time. It is an important reminder. So you don't feel bad. You didn't bring the stream down. If anyone ever brings up death to me, I'm not someone that shies away from it, because I've seen it for my whole life, heard about it. I've lost people I love. I've seen other people lose the people I love. I know what it does to people. So thank you for sharing. Gonk says it's sad losing YouTube people. We connect with them, but it's like we don't know them at the same time. Yeah, I feel that. A few years ago, I found out it's JJ. JJ passed away, and it really like rattled me. I never talked about it on here, but he actually sent me my lightsaber, my first Luke Skywalker lightsaber. And he was such a sweet, caring person. It was just the sweetest thing. And then I found out a couple years ago that he passed away, and I didn't know him closely, but I had enough interactions with him to be moved by who he was as a person and to appreciate him. And we don't always have to know someone personally to know a part of them that means enough for us to mourn when they die. And I was just so sad when I found that out. I feel like I know so many of you, not know personally necessarily, but I feel like I know so many of you, and it goes both ways. So even if it wasn't someone I watch, it would still be, if it was someone I see comment, I feel like I get to know your personalities and your comments, the things you're interested in, the things you like, the things that make you laugh, the things that make me laugh. These are real human interactions. I think we can forget sometimes and think, oh, it's the internet, nothing's real, but there is real human connection behind it. So it is real, especially as I think relationships get more tenuous over time, personal relationships, and people are feeling more disillusioned with the way the world's going, sometimes we can build really authentic, meaningful connections on the internet because we're not being forced to be around people we don't agree with. We can find people we do agree with on certain things, or at least people that we respect their opinions or their beliefs, and we can learn from them. And I feel I find more like-minded people here on YouTube than I do in person. Holocron, consciousness is a non-local phenomenon. After all, we are all connected and you can feel others even over the internet if we know ourselves well enough to filter out the interference. I love that. That's really cool. That's beautiful. I do think there's absolutely something to universal consciousness because I've just had too many coincidences with things keeping coming up into my field and then in another person's field that seem completely disconnected, and then all of a sudden you'll be talking about the same thing. It's interesting how that happens. It's like a consciousness algorithm that keeps coming up. Oh, by the way, please keep John Williams, the amazing, incredible, mind-blowingly beautiful human being and composer, in your hearts and in your prayers. If you are spiritual or religious, please. He's 92 years old and he's just canceled his concert for a month out due to health reasons. So we love John Williams. He's incredible. I was lucky enough to see him in concert. It was the best concert I've ever been to in my life. He was amazing. He's made some of the most beautiful music we've ever heard in film. Incredibly talented, skilled, beautiful person, wonderful human being. Best for John Williams. Let's hope for the best for John Williams, and we have to be realistic. He's 92. We'll keep him in our hearts. And if not, maybe he'll stick around for the cure for death and he'll be the first immortal person ever. And I would so vote for John Williams to be the first immortal person ever to never die against his will. I'm sure he probably won. He's probably like, guys, it's been long enough. My first concert ever, fun fact, was the Monkees, because I was obsessed with the Monkees. I loved the Monkees. I used to watch reruns of the Monkees, and I actually had a lot of the Monkees memorabilia. And I went to see them for my first concert when I was 14 with my parents at the Oakdale Theater in Wallingford, Connecticut, I think. I used to be a member. They had this black and white like subscription magazine that I paid for monthly to be a subscriber to like this Monkees magazine. Like the Monkees were from the 60s and I was a 14-year-old in the 90s. I don't know how that happened, but I love them. Take care of yourselves. You're the only ones who can really do it. Yes, other people can help you in your life and they can be there for you and you have beautiful, meaningful relationships. But what happens if something happens to that relationship or if something happens to that person? You need to be there for yourself. So please take care of yourself. If you don't know how, start learning now. There is a plethora of information on the internet learning how to take care of yourself. I've been partaking in it. I love learning how to take better care of myself because it's not something that came intuitively to me for a long time. And now I'm doing it and it feels great. So, and I'll leave you again with this quote. My dad sent me this. It's a Carl Jung quote. I'm reading it again for anyone who didn't see it before. As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light of meaning in the darkness of mere being. Carl Jung. Beautiful quote. If you're ever looking for a good quote or something to motivate you or make you think inwardly a little differently, Carl Jung is a wonderful and rich resource of wisdom and insight. I agree, Anonymous. It is a great quote. Great to see all of you. Good night, everyone. I'm going to go eat. Manja. Bye, guys.